for the first time. Their presence added a new dimension to the event, and we're excited to continue growing this collaboration. We're very proud to announce that the expanded donation drive was a tremendous success. Congratulations. The community, Public Works, Parks and Rec, through the generosity of everybody, collected 234.2 pounds of food, which was shared between the Alliston Food Bank and our town food bank, Servant, Beaton, and Tockenham. Director Ip, good job, your entire team, senior management team, we thank you very much. So a round of applause for all their hard work, please. Thank you. Now I'm going to go to members of council. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mayor Norcross. I'll start it off by saying this weekend, the South Simcoe Railway is honoring Eric Smith, better known to most of us as Smitty, for his decades of work on the railway. Smitty sadly passed away on December 15th, 2024. In 1991, Smitty joined the South Simcoe Railway as a master mechanic and was responsible for all the equipment. Smitty was then elected to the board of directors and eventually became president. His hard work and dedication is so very much appreciated. His passion for the railway was evident. To honor his contributions, the railway is holding a memorial service this Saturday, May 31st at 2 p.m. at the South Simcoe Railway, and all are welcome. For my next announcement is exciting news that it sounds like New Tech Extreme Ball Hockey League will be sending a few teams to nationals in August, and one of those teams is the men's 30-floor plus team that actually has two of our own playing on it. Derek Abbott's and Rob Greenwood are going to be representing New Tech at nationals, so big congratulations goes out to all of them and all of the players moving on to nationals. And last one is Honeyfest this weekend was well attended. Thanks to all the volunteers who put their heart and soul into this festival. There are 4 members that are actually retiring from the committee after giving 20 years of volunteer service to the Honeyfest. That's Penny, Rick, Shelley, and Teresa. Thank you for giving your blood, sweat, and tears to making Beaton and New Tech even better. And thanks to everyone who attended. It was a great day. Thank you.
No, thank you. I can just imagine how quick 20 years goes by, eh? Well said. Councillor Masters, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to announce that the Alliston Legion has just launched its art exhibition. It's open to all veterans in the area. So to all the vets out there, if you can put pen to paper and or a brush to paper and would like to have your art exhibited, then please contact the Alliston Legion and they'll give you the details. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for that, Councillor Masters. I'm going to go to Councillor Gabrick, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to announce that Gussapalooza, it's a music arts festival that is coming to our neighbor in Cookstown. The event is a fundraiser, though, for the Stevenson Memorial Hospital, and they are currently looking for volunteers, sponsors, workshop leaders, and vendors. So if anyone is interested in contributing their time, they can go to gussapalooza.com. And then I'd also like to congratulate Tim Hortons locally in town. They actually raised over $41,000 for Matthews House Hospice and the Stevenson Memorial Hospital Foundation through their annual Smile Cookie campaign. So that was wonderful to be a part of. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that. Councillor Rappin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Town Teas opened up this past weekend with their grand opening, and they donated $1,000 to a local Kiwanis club, and we're grateful for that donation. And then I just want to mention that next week I'm going to be busy from Wednesday till Sunday, volunteering at the Canadian Open. That's in Caledon, not too far from here, 45 minutes. And you'll see me on the 13th hole, so be sure to say hi. If you're busy playing, I'll cheer you on. Is anyone in the Canadian Open here? Mike? All right, thank you.
Well, technically you are in the Canadian Open, Councillor Rappin, so congratulations. Well done. So I'm going to go to the clerk to identify any items to add or delete to the agenda, please. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have one presentation this evening, and that's recorded as D-1, Ken Stouffer, and he will be speaking on climate action programs. Thank you,
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So I have it be a result of the agenda for the council meeting held on Monday, May 26, 2025, be confirmed as circulated. Councillor Bish, you can move that. Thank you. Councillor Jacks is joining us virtually. Would you second that? Yes, I see the hand sign up. Thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Council. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest, please? Councillor Foster, please.
Item PM1, pecuniary interest for the public planning meeting.
Thank you, duly noted. So we have a motion be to resolve the minutes of the council meeting dated May 12, 2025 be adopted as circulated. Councillor Masters, would you move that? Thank you. Councillor Foster, would you second that? Thank you. All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you, Council. So I'm going to go to the clerk now to identify items for separate discussion and the reason thereof. Please, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. D-1, Ken Stouffer. He will be presenting on climate action programs. And PM1, page here, application for zoning bylaw amendment 1955550, Ontario Incorporated, Liberty Developments Corporation 124-146, Yonge Street, Alliston. There's a pecuniary interest that's been declared. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to members of council now for separate items for separate discussion. Councillor Biss, please.
Thank you, Worship. R1, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gadberg, please.
CW12, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Now I'm going to go to members of the public to identify items for separate discussion under the section reports for information or immediate discussion. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So now, Madam Clerk, I'll go back to you to summarize all items identified for separate discussion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. D-1, we have a deputation from Ken Stouffer regarding climate action programs. R-1, 2025 year-end budget variance report as at March 31st, 2025. CW12, the Municipal Accountability Act additional information memorandum. And lastly, PM1, application for zoning bylaw amendment 1955550, Ontario Incorporated, Liberty Development Corporation 124-146, Yonge Street, Alliston. There's a pecuniary interest declared.
Thank you very much. So we have a motion be resolved that items CW1 to CW5 in the Committee of the Whole meeting report dated May 12, 2025, and the Committee of the Whole Planning Public Meeting report dated May 14, 2025, including additional information memorandums, with the exception of those items identified for separate discussion, be approved, and the recommendations therein be adopted. And further, that communication items and another item listed on the council meeting agenda dated May 26, 2025, with the exception of those items identified for separate discussion, be received and are adopted. Deputy Mayor, would you move that? Sure. Thank you. Councillor Harris-McIntyre, would you second that? Thank you very much. All those in favor, Council? Okay, that's carried. Deputations requiring statutory of public meetings. We do not have any tonight. So the first item on the agenda is deputations relating to new matters. It's D1, Ken Stouffer, Climate Action Programs. Mr. Stouffer, would you like to come up to the front microphone, please? I'm sure they advise you our deputations are 7 minutes.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council.
Thank you.
For the opportunity to make this brief presentation. I've lived in Alliston for 45 years and raised our kids here, and this report advises Council to avoid involvement in costly climate action programs that are designed to lower our carbon footprint. I'm referring to plans put forward by organizations like the ICLEI Partners for Climate Protection Program and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. These are marketed as progressive climate initiatives, but they often impose significant financial burdens on municipalities without yielding proportional benefits. And I say this as a taxpayer who's alarmed by out-of-control spending at every level of government. Why should millions of our dollars be spent reducing CO2 output when Ontario is naturally a net carbon sink due to its vast forests, wetlands, and agricultural lands, which absorb more CO2 than the province emits? Further, there is no shared liability. Municipalities face full financial and legal liability for the outcomes of implementing PCP programs, while ICLEI and its funding partners explicitly disclaim responsibility. My understanding is that Simcoe County has signed on to FCM ICLEI. We need our mayor and deputy mayor of New Tecumseh to act to rescind the motion whereby the county of Simcoe signed on to FCM ICLEI. This will give the residents of New Tecumseh and Simcoe County better value for their tax dollars. We cannot afford these unnecessary programs, and we especially can't afford them when the empirical data shows that there is no climate crisis and CO2 is not even close to being a problem. This whole climate crisis... The whole climate crisis perspective hinges on CO2. If the premise that man-made CO2 is a problem is wrong, all these climate-related programs are a colossal waste of resources. Earth climate history shows the promise is dead wrong. What follows are 6 examples of major climate change from before the time man used fossil fuels. These examples of climate change are more dramatic than anything that's happened during the age of fossil fuels. Example number 1. In the distant past, the Canadian Arctic was much warmer than it is today. There are many articles describing as many as 5 different mummified forests in our Arctic. CBC has an article called "Mummified Arctic Forest May Yield Climate Clues." A newly unearthed mummified forest on a remote island in the Canadian Arctic where no trees currently grow is giving researchers a peek into how plants reacted to ancient climate change. Why was the Arctic so much warmer in the distant past at a time when man wasn't using fossil fuel? Why is the Arctic so much colder now? Example number 2. In the distant past, Greenland was warm. Associated Press and UPS, or PBS have an article called "Unlocking the Oldest Known DNA Revealed a Lost Greenland from 2 million years ago." It says, "Today it's a barren Arctic desert, but back then it was a lush landscape of trees and vegetation with an array of animals." Example number 3, Science Direct has an article that describes a medieval warm period and a little ice age in Greenland. What caused the warming of the medieval warm period? We weren't using fossil fuels at that point in time. Example number 4, speaking of ice ages, it's accepted as fact that there's been at least one major ice age on our planet. Ice covered much of North America. What made the Earth warm up and melt all that ice? We know it wasn't widespread use of fossil fuels. If indeed the Earth is warming in our day, and there is serious debate about whether that's actually the case, how do we know we're not still recovering from the last ice age? The honest answer is we don't know. Example number 5, many frozen mammoths, these great big like elephants, have been found in Siberia. In the stomachs and between the teeth of the mammoths were found plants and grasses that do not grow now in northern Siberia because it's too cold now. Why was Siberia so much warmer in the distant past? We know it wasn't because of humans using fossil fuels. Example 6, Antarctica used to be warm. The New York Times has an article called "Fossil Shows Cold-Blooded Frogs Lived on Warm Antarctica." Compared to what happened in the distant past, climate fluctuations in the last 100 years when we've been burning fossil fuels, these have been tiny. The climate fluctuations in the past 100 years have been tiny compared to these earlier climate fluctuations. These examples from our actual climate history contradict the current climate crisis narrative. In bringing this to a close, you wouldn't know this final point if you only listened to mainstream media, but many scientists know that the climate crisis narrative is dead wrong. One such scientist is Princeton physics professor William Happer. He co-authored a book on atmospheric CO2. He says CO2 is not a pollutant, it's not a problem, it's plant food. He points out that glaciers started melting a long time before the Industrial Revolution. Many people are surprised to learn that CO2 comprises only 0.1% 0.04% of the Earth's atmosphere. It's a trace gas. If we measured CO2 outside this building today, we'd get a reading of 400 parts per million. In this room, we'd get a reading of about 1,700 parts per million. If we were the crew of a submarine, we'd be living with about 5,000 parts per million. Plants stop growing at 150 parts per million. This professor makes the point that over most of the Earth's history, CO2 averaged between 1,000 and 2,000 parts per million. Remember, today we're at 400 parts per million. Many greenhouse operators today pump extra CO2 into their greenhouses because it improves the health of plants in every way and improves yields up to 30%. I asked Google what the optimum amount of CO2 is for plant growth, and it told me between 1,000 and 1,500 parts per million. Remember, our current atmosphere only has 400 parts per million, and plants stop growing at 150 parts per million. The creator who designed the Earth's plant life knew what he was doing. We need more CO2, not less. We need to stop these expensive climate-oriented programs because they're based on wrong information and harmful to mankind. Thank you for receiving this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Stouffer. Thank you for your presentation. If it's permissible with you, I was going to ask council, is there any comments or questions that you might be able to answer?
No, glad to.
Thank you. So I'm going to go to Councillor Masters, please.
Thank you, Worship. Well, Mr. Stouffer, thank you very much for that. I probably believe that part of what you're saying is the case. It's no secret that Canada is a small contributor to the world's global emissions, 1.76 in 2005, and it's now down to 1.4 in 2021. But however, our per capita, emissions are growing and are getting higher. Per capita. So that's
No, please allow the member to speak.
Yeah. So just one comment I'd like to make. I do follow climate control quite a bit because I have an interest in it. But one thing I know that we don't have much control of here is that we've lost our boreal forests. The Amazon we've lost. Sorry, we have lost our boreal forests. We've lost 1/3 of the Amazon, which is one of our biggest coolers in our climate today. That helps keep things on an even scale. And we know that the boreal forest going through Russia has also been clear cutting for many years now. And so I think this is one of the biggest contributors to the issues that we have with our climate. Thousands of years ago, like you were stating, we didn't have technology. We lived in holes in the ground. Today, we can control things. We can change the weather and change things that end up... Yes.
Please let him finish. Thank you.
So we can. There are things we can do. So all I'm saying is I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but technology today, I think, as we go forward, is going to really help us improve whatever we have now. I'd just like to make those comments. And thank you for your interest in that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Stouffer? Thank you for taking the time to come out and make a presentation to council tonight.
Thank you.
It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So we have a motion be resolved that the deputation of Ken Stouffer be received. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Foster and Councillor Masters, you'll second that? Thank you very much. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you again for coming. So we're moving on to the next item, which is R1 2025 year-end budget variance report as of March 31st, 2025. And that was called by Councillor Biss. Yes, please feel free to leave. You're more than welcome to stay, but if you'd like to, it's up to you. Councillor Biss, please.
Thank you, Worship. My feelings are hurt as everyone's leaving. This is... Must have been something I didn't say, I guess. Through your worship to Director Gallant, once again, thank you for this update on the year-end budget variance report. And also thanks to Allison Stumpo for putting this together. Just a quick question, two questions actually. When we refer to on page 4, the land and property sale reserve, can you confirm that that's what we used to call the old HEC reserve? And second question, real quick, what is the balance of the HEC fund or the land and property sale reserve at this time?
Thank you. I'll just go to the Director Gallant, please.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Biss. Yes, you are correct. We still internally call it the Heck Reserve, but that was the old name for it. The balance in that reserve is approximately $7.3 million.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Councillor Biss, I have a motion here. I was going to move it. Be resolved, the report number FIN 2025-11 be received. Will you move that? Thank you. Councillor Cox, will you second that? Thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Council. Next one was CW12. Councillor Gabrick, the Municipal Accountability Act, Additional Information Memorandum. Please, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate the work that staff and Mr. Mascarin did in getting some clarification for us on the questions that arose at the last meeting with regards to Councillor Harrison McIntyre's motion. Although the clarity is helpful, I still feel like there is a good reason for the unanimous vote required to remove someone from our council. Mr. Mascarin cited constitutional reasons, and although suggested that maybe even a judge should be the person that does that. So with that said, I was just hoping that Councillor Harrison McIntyre would consider leaving the motion as unanimous as opposed to the 2/3 vote with the new information that has come forward.
I'll go to Councillor Harrison McIntyre, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that I had a call this weekend from a counselor, and she is a counselor who is part of a group of a bunch of women counselors who are experiencing situations where the integrity commissioner, not our integrity commissioner, but integrity commissioners are being weaponized and used against them. And from after speaking to
So we have Jack Amadelia, Watson Associates. Welcome. I know you've done a lot of work on this. It's greatly appreciated, and our deputations are 7 minutes, please.
Council for having me. After several months, we are here to present a final report and final options to council on the ward boundary and council composition. If we go to the first slide, a couple of things that we want to do tonight. We do want to provide council with a quick update as to what we heard in terms of, so you're aware of some of the public engagement we had, and then we'll go through some of those options in terms of the final ones, and then be able to answer any questions or any comments. So in terms of what we heard, pretty typical with ward boundary reviews, most of the respondents who engage with us, 10, 20 plus year residents, very similar to how people vote and how they engaged politically. When we look at who answered, we had a pretty good spread amongst the wards, a couple of wards higher than others, but answers we got from all the wards. When we look at what community or what guiding principle was most important to the population, population trends as well as community of interest were pretty hand in hand. And then when we asked the community which of the preliminary options, we had 7 of them that we went out to the public with. Option 1 was strongly favored compared, all of them got some vote, but option 1 stood out a little bit compared to the other ones. If we move to the next slide, the other thing that we were asked to do as part of this review was not only look at the ward configuration and the number of wards, but we were also asked to look at the role of deputy mayor. So in terms of the survey question with regard to deputy mayor, we asked the public, do they think that deputy mayor should remain in a status quo position, elected at large? Vast majority of the respondents said yes. Then we also asked, should that role change on county council and the deputy mayor position be removed as part of that composition? Do they think still, or does the public think that it still should be a separate elected at large position? Changes a little bit in terms of the yes and the no, but still a stronger vote towards a yes. If we go to the next slide, we'll get into what the existing wards were, just to refresh that for council. So map of the existing wards are on the slide, and as well we see population by ward for both 2025 as well as projected for 2036. Our evaluation of the existing ward system, not bad, but a few issues. When we look at some of the population parity, we want population ideally to be within 25% of the average for each ward. We see Ward 4 a bit on that low side. We see Ward 8 a bit on that high side. The spread between those wards, it's almost double. Ward 8 is almost double, or a little bit more than double the size of Ward 4. So if we can try to fix that. As the municipality grows out, Ward 4 stays low, and then we have a few wards, about 3 wards, that are sort of in that 8,000 range. So again, not bad from a population parity perspective, but definitely some wards that jump out to fix. Some things we heard about the lines possibly being a little bit clearer in terms of where one boundary starts and where one ends. And if we can deal with some of the communities of interest and the way New Tecumseh has grown over the last decade, that would be something we wanted to touch on as well. So if we move to the next slide, like I said, we ultimately had 7 preliminary options that we went out to the public with. We went out with options that looked at status quo, so remaining at 8 wards. We looked at options reducing council by 1 ward to 7 wards, and as well as reducing by 2 wards to 6 wards. Ultimately, if we go to the next slide, what we landed on as our final option, and we're presenting 2 options to council. One is preferred, and that's this one. So this is final option 1, the consultant preferred option. It was also preliminary option 1, and as we mentioned before, it was also the most favored option in terms of the survey. This option does reduce the number of wards from 8 to 6. From a guiding principle perspective, if we go to the next slide, from a population perspective, population parity is good both today and when we look at future projected populations. We heard a lot about the lines in this option. The public, both in person and in the survey, seem to really like these clean lines or almost these horizontal type of wards. Public also liked that the settlement areas had a rural area around it, those connections that go back and forth between those places. So pretty strongly favored, as we saw in the survey. Also something from the consultant team that we thought really met the guiding principles well. Our second final option, if we go to the next slide, one more, thank you, was the 7-ward option. So this was preliminary option 4 when we went out to the public. Again, some similarities that we see in our final option 1. A lot very similar when we look at sort of the southern part of the municipality, keeping in mind those horizontal wards that people seem to like. As we add a ward, a little bit different in Alliston, where in the 6th ward option, we're able to keep Alliston pretty contained in 2 wards with a very clear north-south split along Victoria. When we add a ward, we can't do that with Alliston, so it becomes 3 wards with 1 ward taking in some of that rural area. So that's probably one of the bigger differences between final option 1 and final option 2. If we go to the next slide, again, from an evaluation perspective, we think both options are pretty good. We think they're credible. We think they're viable. We think as your consultant team, if there was an appeal, that we can defend both of these options at the Ontario Land Tribunal. We think both could fit for New Tecumseh. If we go to the next slide, we just want to mention a couple of other things. So as we were deliberating our final options and discussing these final options with staff, we also thought it would be prudent if council, in their wisdom, decides that perhaps a 6 or a 7 ward change is not something for your municipality right now. We wanted to ensure that we looked at some of the 8 ward configurations we provided as well. This one that we recommended, if council wanted to stick with 8 wards, we thought preliminary option 7 would be a pretty good change. It doesn't completely overhaul the system. It incorporates some of the things we heard in the other options in terms of some of those strip or horizontal wards. Again, it's not perfect from a population parity perspective. We do have Ward 8 that still remains high, but as we move into the future, most of the wards fit. So it could be a viable 8-ward configuration as well. And just if we move a couple of slides forward, yeah, so like I said before, we were also asked to give a recommendation or provide some perspective on the role of deputy mayor, currently an elected at-large position for a municipality. Again, just to refresh, no mention of the deputy mayor in the Municipal Act. It's not something that's discussed, but in the County of Simcoe, it is in the County of Simcoe legislation. It's been an important role historically in the County of Simcoe, largely because, as we talked about before, the deputy mayor is the 2nd county seat. So our recommendation really looked at a couple of things if we move to the last slide. So one thing we wanted to be clear about. So if there is no change to the county composition and the deputy mayor is retained as the 2nd county seat, we would recommend no change for your municipality at this time. We think that if that position is the same, that it can still be an elected at-large position. If that county composition changes and the deputy mayor is removed from that 2nd seat at the county, our recommendation would be contingent on a couple of things. If council determined that final option 1 or 2 or some other option that they saw fit that reduced the size of council, we would recommend that the deputy mayor position is retained as an at-large position, even if county composition changes. If county composition changes and council determines that 8 wards is the right fit, so a council size status quo of 10, then we think that it would be a reasonable approach for council to possibly look at either changing the role of deputy mayor or changing how the deputy mayor is elected, maybe as opposed to an at-large separate elected position. It could be selected amongst councillors. Sometimes it's a rotating position. Sometimes it's an election amongst your peers, but we think that there could be a change. Again, should county composition change and council remains the same in terms of the number of wards. So I think I will stop there and see if there's any comments or questions. Oh, sorry, just a really quick one. So today, council has the authority to do a couple of things. Municipal Act, as we talked about before, is fairly silent on terms of how you do a ward boundary review, but it does authorize council to change composition, look at the method of election, or change the number of wards. So you have that power vested in you by the Municipal Act. After today or after this presentation, you can do a few things. You can pick the consultant preferred final option. You can pick one of the other final options. You can pick one of the preliminary options that we didn't recommend that are in the report, or you can pick one of those and ask for changes or tweaks, or you can do nothing and remain status quo. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Is there any comments or questions in regards to the consultant? Councillor Harrison McIntyre, please.
Sure. Thank you. So if we were to change the composition, the number of councillors, and the county removed the deputy mayor position, it sounded like what you were saying that you weren't recommending that it would be elected from within by the council as opposed to being at large.
Thanks for the question through you, Mr. Mayor. No, if council decided to reduce the number of wards and thereby the number of councillors, and county council removed that requirement of deputy mayor being on county council, we would recommend that it stays status quo for the deputy mayor position. And a little bit of our thinking behind that was if council determines to go smaller, there may be a transition period, right? The deputy mayor does a lot of other things besides sitting on county council, and we thought it would be a good transition period to retain that position elected at large, just to see how it goes when you have less councillors. There may be more committee requirements. There may be other things that the deputy mayor role can sort of step in, and then it gives you an idea maybe on the next election after having gone through it for 4 years, whether it's something that we still need, or maybe you can make a decision on that composition at that time.
Thank you. Councillor Biss, please.
Oh, thank you, Worship. Through your Worship, so a real quick question. As you probably were aware, when we began this process, we were also doing the process of looking at the boundary expansions. And with that boundary expansions, of course, came a population increase projection. And so staff did a great job at looking into where these boundaries, where we were going to expound our boundaries to make it contiguous. We were going to be debating this 2 weeks ago, but the province called and made us put a stop to this. So concerns me in a number of ways, but with regards to the wards and changing the ward boundaries, in your opinion, do you think that we should wait to see what changes are imposed upon us by the province before making this decision, or do you think that that's not germane and we should pursue this nevertheless?
Very great question, and again, through you, Mr. Mayor. It's something I've been struggling with for a couple of years, right, in terms of, and to be perfectly frank, as all these changes were going on with the province, whether it be growth or whether it be governance restructuring or county restructuring, I didn't think that I would be doing as many ward boundaries this last year and a half that I have been doing. My perspective has changed on it because in talking to my clients and talking to municipalities and staff, the reason my perspective has changed is we can't continuously wait, because we don't know when those decisions are going to come from the province. We don't know when they're going to be reversed. And I think what I'm hearing from my clients is they've just had to take accountability for themselves and make the changes they need to make at the appropriate time. If things change, we may have to pivot. That's kind of the reality and the political landscape we live in today. But my advice would be, after this year and a half of this experience in speaking to different municipalities, that you kind of have to do it when you think you have to do it. The other thing I'd add to that with ward boundaries is you have a timeline, right? And if it's something that you want to do for the 2026 election, it has to be completed before January 1st of that election year. And it's something that's appealable as well. So we always give our advice that we try to finish around now, May or June, because if it is appealed, it allows still 6 months for the hearing to happen before you can actually make a change for the next election. So I hope that answers.
Thank you. CAO, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add some color to that, so since the last committee meeting, we've had no conversations or no further information from the province. So it's our intention to bring back the Municipal Comprehensive Review and the OPA to the June 12th meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Gabbard, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. I know a lot of work went into that. The numbers are really, really tiny on your slide, but it looks like only about 250 people voted with respect to the question about the deputy mayor, which seems like a really limited number of people, and 30% declined to answer the question. Is that around the like just comfortability on what the deputy mayor's role would be, or?
There's, I can't answer that completely. We always see in surveys, let's say there's 500 survey respondents, it's always less in terms of certain questions. So it could be, sure, not understanding the role correctly, not understanding the question correctly. Even when we look at the options, right, I forget the numbers that have filled out the survey, but it's quite a bit less in terms of who actually picks an option. Probably the same type of reasoning, that they just might not know enough about the different options and would rather just not answer rather than answer incorrectly or without knowledge. So I think it has mostly to do with that, but I couldn't answer 100% why people choose not to answer a certain question.
Thank you. Just because we have to make decisions around this information, and it's a very limited scope of residents who actually participated in answering that question. So I wouldn't want to accept it as yes is the definitive answer when it's a relatively limited pool.
So if I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, just to add a little bit to that in terms of public engagement, we totally get that and we understand that. Ward boundary reviews and council composition, unfortunately, is not the most exciting topic that people get engaged in. It hurts my ego a little bit, but yeah, I mean, we don't get great engagement, right? A couple of hundred responses in a survey is actually pretty good in terms of that engagement. The other thing I would add to that is, because the survey results ended up picking option 1 highly, and that's our final recommendation, I wouldn't say it's complete coincidence, but many times we have given a recommendation that is the opposite of what the public gave back, because that's kind of our job in this, right, is to kind of, take all that information, digest it, and say, okay, does, what we think fit with what we're hearing in the public? Sometimes the answer is yes or no. So it's for us, I know it's different when I talk to council, but for us as a consultant, it's not the be all and end all. It's a component of the analysis that we look at to really try to ground truth some of the things that we're asking. You're welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Jacks?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the presenter, I'm just curious about the final recommendation remaining as an even number that would be voting members of council. I'm in support largely of reducing the size of council. I just feel that going to a 9 or a 7 total count I just assumed, and ignorant of me, that would be something that would have been probably largely recommended. Could I just hear a little bit more about your firm's position on reducing by 2, but leaving both mayor and deputy mayor, creating again an equal number?
Yeah, thanks. Great question again. And again, through you, Mr. Mayor, something we look at all the time. And when I started doing this about a decade ago, I thought the same thing. I thought, would we ever recommend an even numbered council? Are there even numbered councils? There's a ton of them. I can't remember exactly, but about a third or a quarter of councils, I think, in Ontario are even numbered. So it doesn't seem to be as big of an issue as I originally thought it had, but it's something we ask all the time. It's something when we first started out and working with your clerk's department. Do you have a lot of tie votes? Do you get a lot of, council issues? And are meetings lasting hours and hours? And the answer in most councils, sometimes it happens, but in most councils that I speak to, the answer is no. The other thing that comes up a lot is even when you have an even number council, there could be conflict of interest. There could be a councillor that isn't there that night because of some other obligation. And even though you have an odd numbered council, you end up with an even numbered people voting that night anyway. So I wouldn't ever say it's a non-consideration. Like I said, it's something that we speak about, but I wouldn't, as your consultant, pick an even over an odd number if all the other guiding principles fit in that option that we were giving you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rappin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just looking through the numbers, and I want to just double check. 345 respondents. 33% of them have chosen option option 1, which would be around 114 people in our population of 40,000. 15% of the 345 is 52 people that have chosen option 2 or whatever we're calling it. That's 52 people out of a population of 40,000. Ward 5 and Ward 8 combined for a third of the total respondents, which is 115 people. And so in my head, I'm going, okay, what's going on in Ward 5 and Ward 8? They've done the most responding, you know. Then I slide into social media, where we find that unhappy people are always more vocal. So would that be something that you would you take my lessons from social media being unhappy people are vocal? Could that easily be shifted over to surveys of this ilk?
Thanks again for the question, Councillor. Absolutely, right? I think we tend to look at that. That's why we actually look at responses and start to cross-check it amongst ward to make sure that there's not one theme coming from a couple of wards that are really dominating the survey. Give a quick example of that. I won't name the municipality, but we're working up north, Cottage Association, basically, for other, lack of other words, stuffed the ballot box. But we were aware of it, right? So we were able to look at those survey results with a lens going, okay, I don't want to, by no means, if you're engaged and you're out doing the survey, I don't want to discount that and say, oh, because more people came from that ward, when you had an issue. We have to be careful about how we do that, but definitely something we try to cross-relate in our answers. It's the same answer, I think, as before. We recognize that the numbers are minimal, and especially, as a demographer and a statistician, these are by no means, surveys that we would put out with any kind of confidence interval or anything like that. They're really just a means, like I said, to cross-check some of what we're feeling, some of the things we're hearing. And honestly, for me in public engagement, it's I've learned, like I said, my ego's taken a hit, but I've learned not to be so worried about the quantity, but what are we hearing, right? A lot of times in in-person sessions, 7, 8 people might come through in a couple hours, not the numbers we want, but a lot of times those 7 and 8 people that come through are informed, are engaged, have read the website, have some history, so are able to provide some different perspectives. But I agree fully from a numbers perspective, if this was purely a vote, based on the survey, I agree with all the things you mentioned. But again, that's kind of why we're here, and we talk to council as well. And ultimately, you are all the final decision makers to kind of take all that information and determine, whether it makes sense for you as a council.
May I follow up, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
It was like I came here going, oh yeah, 33% and blah, blah, blah. And I'm fully supportive of reducing council, but I also got to make a logical decision based on the data being provided. And I know for a fact that in my profession as a teacher, there was a survey that went out and I knew the answers I wanted, and I shared them with my Facebook group of like-minded music teachers in the school board. And the survey went out, and all of a sudden our union was fighting for music teachers because no one else bothered to respond. You know what I mean? So I need to figure out, and maybe Ward 5 and Ward 8 would mind commenting, maybe they've got an idea. Why would those groups be more vocal? And is it in a positive or negative? Would you have any sort of way, and I'll leave that with Mr. Mayor to decide how he wants to go with it, but I'm just wondering if Wards 5 and 8, if there's something's gone on, because right now I'm being asked to make a decision on 38.52 people in my ward. So like if I take Ward 5 and 8 out of it, that leaves 2/3 of the rest of the 345 to be divided by 6 wards, which is 38 people. 38 and a half people. Right? So that person that lives on Ward 1 and 2, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, does Ward 5 or Ward 8 have any idea why they would get such a response, and is it warranted?
I really think that's speculative, and I don't know how we could, sorry, Councillor. Yeah, I think it's kind of speculation there as to why the amount. It could be the demographics. There could be a lot of factors that fall into it, accessibility. So, are you okay with my answer to that?
Yeah, I agree. It could be all those things, right? It could be I mean, it's the same question, I think, as asking why does one ward get higher participation and turnout than another ward? I think it's, engagement. It could be back to what I talked about earlier. The longer you've lived in a place or in a ward, the more likely you are to engage and answer surveys. Yeah, it could be a variety of reasons, that we can pick apart as to why, but yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor Norcross. Thank you for your presentation. A question for you. Your two final recommendations, early on in your presentation, you used the terms largely successful, partially successful, no and yes. And when I look at recommendation 1, you have 4 largely successfuls and 1 yes. And when I look at option 2, you have 4 yeses and 1 largely successful. So that criteria that appeared to me, and I could be very wrong in my assessment, seemed as if that's what you were basing your criteria on, but yet your final result. And I'm fine with either one, to be honest with you. I believe that a reduction in council is the desired outcome for the residents, without question. And so whether that's a couple down, so I'll ask you to answer that question first, if I could.
Thank you, Councillor, again, for you, Mr. Mayor. So when we determine this as a team, there's not necessarily, we don't have a score of each one. We have exactly the evaluations, the design of the wards, trying to take in all the feedback that we've heard, and ultimately come up with a final option. So I agree, the evaluation, according to the guiding principles, slightly better when we look at the 7-ward option compared to the 6-ward option. In full honesty, this was a real struggle for us in terms of coming up with a preferred option in terms of 6 or 7. Ultimately, we just thought that the 6-ward lines were a little bit clearer. We liked that Alliston in the 6th ward was contained and a nice, easy, identifiable split using, from what we heard, a pretty, according to the residents and council, Victoria seems like a natural split between north and south. So that was, the sort of sliver, I think, that kind of, for your consultant team, for us to kind of recommend the 6 over the 7. But I agree with the councillor, it was extremely close in terms of those two options. That gave it a very slight edge to be a preferred option, but we think both are really good final options for council to consider. So I hope that gives you a little bit of perspective.
Supplementary, very good.
Go ahead.
I think when I look at the 6 option, I think because having people in wards gets you closer to the residents. And it would be a struggle for anybody. If you're elected at large, it's hard to get granular in the entire municipality, especially in a municipality as large as ours. So when I look at the 7 option, it seems to give more ward coverage. If the deputy mayor position, which appears to be moving towards disappearing in council, but I don't have a crystal ball like the rest of us, so I don't know. But either way, a lot of good work there, and I think overall a reduction in council is warranted, and we'll see where it all goes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Biss.
Thank you, Your Worship. As the Ward 5 councillor, thank you, Councillor Rappin, for bringing up those questions. However, I don't have any answers for you. However, I do want to ask, through Your Worship, to the presenter, and it's based on Councillor Foster's comments. I was going to ask something similar. If we're looking at basically a tie here between option 1 and option 2, the principles that us as a council, as you as a consultant, have agreed on are the 5 main principles. And I guess based on that, because I am in support of both of these as well, but just based on the coverage and the answers for the 5 main principles, I would then offer to council that option 2 obviously kind of gets us over the line, considering, as Councillor Foster mentioned, we've got 4 yeses and a largely successful versus 4 largely successful and 1 yes for option 1. So I just wanted to just put that out there, and also mention that I am the Ward 5 councillor, so thank you, Councillor Rappin, for bringing that up.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Harrison McIntyre, then I believe Councillor Biss, you're going to put that motion on the floor then for option 2. Thank you very much. Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you. So you were saying that you were having people speak to you at the public informations, and that you were hearing largely the same things. Can you expand a little bit on what kind of feedback you were hearing from people?
Yeah. I think think on some of the main issues that we talked about, in person was pretty consistent from some of the survey respondents in terms of the appreciation of the deputy mayor position being elected at large, again, assuming things stay status quo at council. I think a couple of other things we heard, again, like I said earlier, were that change to a strip ward as opposed to kind of the donut with the hole in the middle, as I call them now. I think we heard that there's, some association, right? Even though there's rural and urban settlement areas, those rural residents come into those urban settlements for church or school or grocery shopping. So I think there was some, changes the way people think, but when they saw it, they kind of liked those ideas. So I think those were some of the general ideas. In terms of smaller council, I think that's I would be lying if I didn't hear that, right? I think that's sort of the political landscape we're in terms of council size. So we heard a little bit from that perspective as well. But I would say those were kind of the general themes. Communities of interest, again, some desire to try to ensure that the rural area, maintained like a voice in all this, recognizing that, population growth is occurring in different places. So is there, were there things we can do there? But I think those were some of the general themes.
Thank you. Councillor Masters.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for that report. It's much appreciated. Just carrying on from what I've heard here in council, is there a statistical report that our actual staff can provide that could help, with assessing the different wards? One just comes to mind right now. We do a public works activities report for requests for residents for things that are a problem, or it would maybe speak to the activity in the different wards, rather than people that may have just verbal complaint. Would something like that be helpful in assessing the wards, or is that sort of out of the purview of what you do? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. And again, through the mayor, the reports that we've done as part of this process should have, maybe not specifically those things, but did look at various types of things within the wards: population, number of households, engagement, talking to councillors to try to get some sense of participation and accessibility. But that particular report, I'm not sure if that exists, but yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point of clarification. On option 2, when it was originally presented to the public and council, the boundary line was the 10th line for currently Ward 6 for expanding. In option 2 now, it goes up to the 11th line. Is there rationale for that, or, okay?
Thank you again, Councillor, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, some of the feedback we received, and we were kind of revising our last look at final options, talking with staff, we just thought if we can push that area up a little bit for that ward and encompass more of the rural area, we thought it would be something, again, from feedback that would be positive, and it didn't have a huge implication from a population parity perspective. So we thought it was a reasonable adjustment to make to that initial option.
Thank you. Just supplementary. I'd be interested to see, I know there's not a lot of homes there, but obviously there is a fair number of properties. Because that ward in the next 10 years is set to grow, and the one above it, the green shaded area, is not going to be reaching the population that would put it within the 25 percentile mark. I'm wondering if this option is the preferred option, if we could maybe bring it back down to the 10th, which may, in the 10-year span, maybe get those numbers a little bit more adjusted to being closer.
Again, thank you for the question, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I would consider that, especially since that's what we put out to the public, a very minor change. If council thought that that line worked better in this option, again, from a population perspective, it's not huge numbers. You're absolutely right. It's a little bit of help. So we don't see an issue with that line, moving north or south. Again, I would put it to council if you think that's a better boundary line and that makes more sense from a community perspective, then I would consider it a viable tweak to make and a reasonable tweak to make.
Thank you very much. Okay, council, we have a motion. Thank you again. So we have a motion in front of us, CW4 Strategic Service. Final report, ward boundary review, presentation, Jack Amendola. Did I say that right? Amendola, my apologies. Watson and Associates. We have a recommendation, report number admin 2025-15 be received. Further, that the presentation of Jack Amendola be received, and further that council select Watson Associates Economics Limited preferred option 2, as outlined in staff report admin 2025-15, and is further defined in Appendix B to be approved as the town's new ward system configuration to take effect for the 2026 municipal election. For the deputy mayor position continue to be elected at large, and for that a bylaw be enacted to reflect the changes to the town's ward system and be renumbered accordingly. Councillor Biss, you're going to move that? Do we have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Galbraith, you're... Sorry, just seeking clarification on the motion. Okay.
Because there's a lot of moving parts to the motion. One is the reduction in the ward boundaries, one is the geographic change to the boundaries, one is the role of the deputy mayor, and one is Councillor Cox's request to reduce the line to the 10th. So I'm wondering if we can pick the motion apart and vote on things separately.
Well, I think I understand what you're saying. I think what we're doing now is we've got to decide what option we want to go with. Do you want to go with option 1, or do you want to go with option 2? And if there's minor, major tweaks, that'll be dealt with separately, if that's okay. So we just got to pick, do we want option 1 or option 2? Either we want 6 ward councillors or do we want 7 ward councillors? And then I would move on to any other suggestions or changes. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor Norcross. I think for myself, there's a tie-in together because I think Councillor Cox has a, I mean, that's north of Beaton. So if there's justification for that, I could support that without a problem. I think that ward option 1 or option 2, from my mind, would be contingent upon the deputy mayor's position. So I don't think that you can support one without the other, and why the 3 items that were asked for by Councillor Gabrick could easily be amended or adjusted so it's one wholesome motion that covers all 3 things. I don't know why we'd go a different way than that.
We can do this any way you like. I just like to get through it. So Councillor Cox, please.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, potentially to the clerk. I'm a little bit confused too. I'm thinking the way that Councillor Gabrick has suggested it might be the way that we would have to go if we wanted to make amendments before we vote on whether it's option 1 or option 2. If I can just get that clarification.
I'll go to the clerk.
So under the procedure bylaw, if a member of council does request it to be voted on separately, and it's clear there's distinct proposals, then council shall do that.
Can I go to the CAO, please?
If I might offer a suggestion, is that Councillor Biss's motion on the table, and then you deal with each of the component parts by amendment. So someone, Councillor Cox, can propose a line change. It can be voted upon. Next, the other option about deputy mayor, if you want to consider that separately, could be voted on, and then the sum total could be the active motion on the table.
Incorporated one. So, okay, so we have a motion on the floor, duly moved and seconded. Councillor Cox, you're putting an amendment that the line drop from the 11th to the 10th? Oh.
I'm through you, Mr. Mayor. I think we're doing the amendments after, if that's
Well, that's what I originally wanted to do, but I wondered if there was...
Okay, my apologies. That's what I thought I heard the CAO say.
Yeah, so Mr. CAO will deal with the original motions that's on the floor, and we can do amendments afterwards.
So I refer that to the clerk, but it would strike me as that if you vote on the motion on the floor, then amendments are no longer operational. So you should table the motion that you want to vote on, and then take amendments to that main motion. And then at the end, you vote in its totality.
Fantastic.
Did I get that right, Pam, as an approach?
Through his worship to council, certainly that's an approach. You can move and second this motion and then add amendments, and then we can vote on it in its entirety, or you can break out the motion into different parts and just vote on them separately. It's at council's discretion.
Councillor Gabbard, please.
Okay, I don't know if Councillor Biss wants to do that or not, but then I would make the motion to put forward final option 2, which was preliminary option number 4 for the 7 ward boundaries and the new geographic pattern, including reducing the line down to the 10th line per Councillor Cox's suggestion.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Biss.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Through your Worship to Council, the motion would be that report admin 2025-15 be received, and further that Council select Watson Associates Economists Limited preferred option 2 as outlined in staff report admin 2025-15, and as further defined in Appendix B to be approved by the town's new ward system configuration to take effect in the 2026 municipal election, and that the line designating Ward 5 be drawn at the 10th line.
And I'll look to the clerk. You're good? Okay. Councillor Cox?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I would just be amiss not to say this, though, that I actually fully support the consultant's recommended option, which is option 1. Which was also the clear preference of the public. It reflects a fair evidence-based approach that balances population growth while respecting community identity and representation. We engaged a professional process and received thoughtful feedback, and this recommendation is a result of both of that. However, if option 1 didn't pass, then yes, I would be supportive of option 2 with that boundary change. However, with option 2 on the table first, even with that boundary change, I can't support it at the moment because I would like to see option 1 go through with the 6 ward configuration.
Thank you. Councillor Foster?
Thank you. I support that motion on the floor. I would just further ask that an amendment be added that the deputy mayor position be removed from our ward, from our election system.
Thank you. So, Madam Clerk, I'm going to go to, this is another amendment. So I'll call a vote on the first amendment was draw on the line. All those in favor of that? That's carried. The second amendment is to eliminate the deputy mayor. You put that on. Is there a seconder for that? I'm not seeing one. Oh. Sorry, Councillor Masters, you're seconding that? Oh, Councillor Gamp, sorry. Please hit your microphone so I can see you. Please, thank you. So it's duly moved and seconded. All those in support of removing that position? Does not carry. So we have that option on the floor, option 2. Duly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please. Councillor Bess. It does not carry. So now we're going to go back to the recommendation report. No, so we'll go back to the original. Sorry, Councillor Bess. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, Your Worship, I thought we already voted on option 2. That was the first vote that passed. No, that was the boundary. That wasn't my motion, though. My motion was for the option 2 and the line to move, and that was passed.
I'm sorry, Councillor Cox. I'll go to the clerk.
I read my motion.
I'll go to the clerk.
Your Worship, perhaps if I can suggest we vote on it again, just for clarification for members of the public and members of council. So the motion that was on the floor for voting, which was moved by Councillor Biss and seconded by Councillor Gabrick, was as follows: that report admin 2025-15 be received, and further that the presentation of Jack Dolio be received, and further that council select Watson and Associates Economists Limited preferred option 2 as outlined in staff report number MD MIN 2025-15 as further defined in Appendix B to be approved as the town's new ward system configuration to take effect for the 2026 election, and further that the line for Ward 5 be redrawn at the 10th line. And that was the motion that council was voting on.
Thank you. So Councillor Biss, you moved that. Councillor Gabrick, you seconded that. Comment or question on it?
Thank you, Mayor Norcross. So I know we went right in, sorry, this is getting a little confusing. I know we went right into a vote after this vote for the deputy mayor position. So I just want to make very clear if we do this option and we're at 7 and we remove the deputy mayor position, then we're at an even number. So why don't we do the 6, remove the deputy mayor position, and then we have an uneven number of council, because it seems like these two options were quite similar. It didn't pass, but it will pass if I vote for it. And we're going to do this all again.
Are we going to, so, point of order, Your Worship, through Your Worship, the clerk, are we voting on everything again, or just the first thing, and then we're going to, this is where I'm a little bit confused.
To His Worship, through to Councillor Biss. So the motion that seems to require clarification is the one that you put on the floor, which is option 2. So that is the one that council needs to clarify for the public and itself as to what the intent was for that motion. So that's the motion I just read.
Okay, is everybody clear? All right.
That motion that Councillor Biss put on the floor was read. You stopped and then said we need a vote, and then the deputy mayor asked a question. So that motion still sits out there and has not been voted on. So am I not correct to say we need clarity on that motion, or it can be withdrawn? But right now it's out there, and it does not have, it has a mover and a seconder, but it does not have a vote, a clear vote. So we have to deal with that resolution first, do we not? Unless it's withdrawn. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm only asking a question, but it's just, it's not been done.
I'll go to the clerk.
Your Worship, as I had it recorded, is there was an amendment put forward from, moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Gabrick, and further that the deputy mayor position be eliminated, and council voted on that, and that was defeated. Should council, this is committee of the whole, so we want to get this right. So if council wants to re-vote on that for clarification, I'll leave that at the discretion of the chair.
Thank you. Before I do that, I'm going to go to Councillor Jacks, please. You're muted.
Thanks. It seems like there's quite a bit of confusion. Wondering if this should be deferred. And I feel like there's a lot of questions. I feel like there's some uncertainty, and we are struggling to clearly define a position to be voted on. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. There just seems to be some confusion about this. Maybe deferring until our next committee meeting would give everyone a little bit more time just to think through the logic and reasoning as to what the criteria is that they are going to be voting with, versus in addition to the criteria that was presented to us from the consultant in the report.
Thank you. So our procedural bylaws, we have a motion for deferral on the floor. That stops all conversation, and you're looking for further clarification on what the items are that could be voted on. Is there a seconder for this motion, please, for Councillor Harrison McIntyre? Okay, so, and we'll come back at the next meeting with more information. I'm not there yet. I just want to clarify for the people at home so that they know where we're going with this. So more information would come back, and we'll come back at our next meeting. I'm looking at the CEO to confirm that I'm giving the right information. I'm looking at the clerk to confirm so that there is no confusion. Okay, so that's good. Everybody understands what we're doing? Okay, thank you. All those in favor then of the deferral, and it'll be coming back? too. So we're not doing with deferral. So we have the motion on the floor.
Your Worship, if you will bear with us, we're going to put the motion up on the screen so that everybody understands exactly what's being voted on. Your Worship, if we can just take 2 minutes, I'm going to type out the motion on, oh, there it is.
No, I will defer to you, Madam Clerk, so you tell me what we're doing.
Your Worship, I think it's best because there's a lot of different components here. I want to make sure Council understands exactly what's being voted on. I want to make sure the public understand exactly what's being voted on. So if you'll just give us 2 minutes.
I'll give you 5.
We will put it up on the screen as it's been presented by Council.
No, can we pause then for 5 minutes while you do what you need to Thank you for fixing those technical difficulties. Welcome back, everybody. I apologize for the longer than usual delay. We had some technical difficulties, but we believe we've worked them all out now with our microphones. So we're going to go back to CW4, Strategic Services. There seems to be some confusion as to how we were doing this. So the clerk has broken it up into different motions. So, Madam Clerk, you have typed them out. Would you mind reading the first one, please?
Certainly, Your Worship. So it's moved by Councillor Biss, seconded by Councillor Gabrick. That report, admin 2025-15 be received, and further that Council select Watson and Associates Economists Limited Preferred Option 2 as outlined in staff report admin 2025-15 and is further defined in Appendix B to be approved as the town's new ward system configuration to take effect for the 2026 municipal election, and further that Ward 5 be redrawn at the 10th line.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and that's the first motion we're voting on. We do have others coming. Any comments or questions in regards to that motion? Okay, I'm not seeing any. All those in favor of that motion that's on the screen, please. And that carries. Thank you. The second motion, and for, I can't read it, I apologize. Madam Clerk, could you read, please?
Certainly, Your Worship, I'd be happy to assist. Moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor Gabrick, and further that the deputy mayor position be removed from being elected at large.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions on that motion? Councillor Harrison-McIntyre, please.
From the report, it sounded like the decision of the deputy mayor didn't have to be made at the same, it didn't have the same time frame for making a decision. Is that, did I read that correct?
Thanks for the question. For you, Mr. Mayor. The time change to make a composition change has to still be done before January 1st of the election year. The difference is that change to deputy mayor election methodology is not something that's appealable. So we don't have to provide those same time references that we do for the ward boundary, like we do it early to allow possible time for appeal. So yeah, you can make that decision separately from the ward boundary. You can make it at a later date, but you still have to, if it takes effect for 2026, it still has to be done before January 1st.
So Your Worship, while we're waiting to hear back from the county about what the county composition is going to be, I would put a motion on the floor that we would defer this decision for the deputy mayor position until we've heard back from the county on the county composition.
Okay, so once we have a deferral, and I know council knows this, but it's for the people watching at home, once we have a deferral, discussion ends, and we have to deal with the deferral. So it was moved by Councillor Harrison-McIntyre that this be deferred until we receive a report back from County Council as to how they're progressing. Am I correct on that, Councillor Harrison-McIntyre? Yes. Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Deputy Mayor? Okay. Yeah, just, I'll go to Councillor Jacks, please. Did you have a comment?
I was just seconding the motion.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. Any comments or questions in regards to the motion? Everyone's heard it, it's on the floor. All those in favor, please, of the deferral? 1, 2, 3. No, it does not carry.
Did Andrea vote for it? Because that was 6.
Sorry, show of hands, like I'm doing my best. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, then that is passed. Thank you. Jack, thanks for your time.
I'm sorry, Your Worship, we just have one more part.
No, I just felt bad for Jack
yes.
standing at the podium. So.
Thank you, Jack, for your patience this evening.
For your patience. And this is next decisions for council. So would you mind reading that too, please?
Certainly, Your Worship, and further that a bylaw be enacted to reflect the changes to the town's ward system and be renumbered accordingly, and that's based on option 2 with redrawing the 10th line.
Thank you very much. Do we have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Biss, Councillor Masters. All those in favor, please, of the motion that's on the floor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, that carries. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to CW 4-2. Councillor Biss, review and considerations of changes to Town of New Tecumseh Procedural bylaw, please.
Thank you, Worship. A couple things. First of all, I want to thank the Clerk's Department for putting this together. Once again, a great report. Lots of key findings that in principle, I support. That said, there are a couple of things that I would like to have amended and removed from the motion. I just turned Council's attention to page 7. This is the outline and the outline of the different things. One of the items, this is item number 8. The suggestion is to revise the regular committee of the whole meetings, members' requests and motions. If you look at the revised wording, a member may add an item to the regular committee of the whole meeting agenda by providing a description of the item and a written motion pertaining to the item that is to be considered by the committee to the clerk before 4:30 p.m. on the Monday, 2 weeks prior to regular committee and committee of the whole meeting in accordance with the agenda review timelines. Currently, we have a 1 week, a 7-day requirement for this. I believe that would be enough. And I would encourage council and councillors, when they are submitting their written motions, to ensure that they are the final motion to be considered, and if they're not to be the final motion, then to give more time to the clerk and to staff to review it. So I would ask that we take that from 2 weeks to 7 days. Next paragraph, prior to submitting the request to the clerk, members shall coordinate with the responsible general manager to ensure the request aligns with strategic plan pillars and in compliance with the current policies and procedures as approved by council. I just remind everyone that our strategic plan is something that we as a council and staff, we work together to create at the beginning of our term. However, it's they're guiding principles and they're not procedures. They're just guiding principles because there's many other principles that we have to follow by. So I would ask that this be removed because I do not believe that us as elected officials, elected by the people, should have the requirement to have our motions reviewed by the general manager. I would encourage councilors to speak with staff to make sure that the wording is correct, that the direction that you're hoping that council will consider is correct. However, I would also stress that motions by councilors are councilors' motions that come from the people. So I'd ask that we remove that. And finally, I do agree with the final statement of members are prohibited from submitting motions if they are a conflict of interest. I do agree with that. I then turn to page 11, item number 15. This one here, we've been asked to revise deputations to the committee meetings. The first paragraph says deputations may address committee on any item listed on the agenda by submitting a request to speak form prior to 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting if participating in person. I would like this removed, and the reason is that I think we're one of the better councils where we allow people to come in. Evan, I see you're out there. Thank you for staying through the whole evening. We have people that come into our chambers. They're not really certain how these discussions will go. As we've seen tonight, the debates meander. I would hate to think that someone would come to council to listen only to find out that they had something to say because they had learned something from the banter, the debate, the informed decision making, only to be told that they couldn't speak or ask a question because they hadn't provided a form by 12 o'clock that day. So I would ask that this portion, this paragraph also be removed. And so, Your Worship, I'd just like to make the motion to remove item 15 and item 8, as I mentioned in my discussion to the point just now.
Thank you. I know. It's second by Councillor Foster. Thank you. And Councillor Cox, did you have a comment, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I am sorry if I repeat some of Councillor Biss's great points when it comes to page 7, when it comes to submitting the requests to the general manager prior to it going on the agenda is, I think by filtering motions through staff before they reach the agenda, this actually conceals potential initiatives from public scrutiny, denying the residents the opportunity to witness the debates and maybe hold their representatives accountable for some of the stuff that we do bring up here. And also, when it comes to aligning with the strategic plan, councillors have to be free to kind of propose new directions and respond to emerging community concerns, even if they don't align perfectly with the strategic pillars that this council has put into place. And if we're going that far, there's really no clear criteria or accountability for how staff might determine whether something aligns with the strategic plan or policy or not. So this just opens the door for maybe some inconsistent, subjective, or even politically motivated decisions if we do that. And I also agree with Councillor Biss about the deputations and having to submit a form prior to the committee of the whole deputations. We do have residents, as Councillor Biss said, that often attend meetings to hear the discussion, and then they feel compelled to share their perspective in real time. And these changes would definitely block that valuable, spontaneous input that they provide. We need to just keep our meetings accessible and keep them simple. And if there's no clear problem being solved here, which I didn't really see from the report, then this change would only serve to maybe silence the participation that this council really needs from the public.
Okay, thank you for those comments. I'm looking to the clerk to see if she's written everything down, because we do have a mover and we do have a seconder. I just want to make a couple of points. I think, one, we certainly want to hear from the public as much as we can, and we've certainly gone out and done that. And council always has the authority to override the procedural bylaw. So I just want to make sure the members of the public know that. Like, we do want to hear from you. And if we can get to the managers as quick as we can, because it's nice to have the information when the public are here. Like, it's great not to have to come back in 2 weeks. So, you know, if council can be cognizant, you know, speak as quick as you can so we can get that information. And we could always override the procedural bylaw. We'll always allow somebody to come to that microphone and speak. So it's moved by Councillor Biss, seconded by Councillor Foster. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Council. We don't have any public notices, and we have adjournment recommendation at the Committee of the Whole meeting of May 26, 2025 adjourned. I have 8:06 p.m., please. Mover or seconder, Councillor Biss, Councillor Deputy Mayor McCollum. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Council. Thank you, staff. Thank you, members of the public that came.